There are wrestlers the world remembers because of the noise they made. The chaos, the blood, the microphone promos that echoed for decades. And then there are wrestlers the world remembers for something quieter and rarer, for the respect they commanded simply by walking through a curtain, for the way an entire industry stood a little straighter when they entered a room. Dory Funk Jr. was that second kind of man. And for more than 60 years, he was arguably the most quietly influential figure the business ever produced. On August 4th, 2026, the wrestling world woke up to news it had been dreading for a long time. Dory Funk Jr. had died at the age of 85. His wife of nearly 4 decades, Marty, confirmed that he passed peacefully in hospice care in Ocala, Florida, the town that had adopted him as one of its own. The cause of death was not immediately disclosed, and within hours, tributes were pouring in from every corner of the globe, from Tokyo to Texas, from the biggest promotion on earth to the smallest independent shows still running in high school gymnasiums. This is the story of Dory Funk Jr., and by the end, you are going to understand exactly why every wrestler who ever met him spoke his name with reverence. Let us go back to the very beginning. Dorrance Ernest Funk was born on February 3rd, 1941. He entered a family where professional wrestling was not entertainment. It was the family trade. It was the air they breathed. His father was Dory Funk Sr., a rugged, no-nonsense wrestler and promoter who ran the Western States sports promotion out of Amarillo, Texas. And Dory Sr. was not the kind of father who let his boys grow up soft. The Funks lived on a ranch. And on that ranch, the 2 Funk sons, Dory Jr. and his younger brother Terry, learned the 2 things that would define their entire lives: hard physical work and how to fight. Their father drilled toughness into them, the way other fathers taught their sons to ride a bike. There were no shortcuts, there was no complaining. There was only the work, the discipline, and the expectation that a Funk would always be tougher than the man across from him. Years later, when a reporter from the Ocala Gazette asked Dory what advice he would give young wrestlers just starting out, his answer captured everything about how he was raised. He said it softly at first, never quit, then a little louder, never quit, and then one final time, loud and forceful enough that there could be no misunderstanding. Never quit. That was not a slogan he picked up somewhere. That was the philosophy his father branded into him on a ranch in West Texas before he was old enough to know any different. But before wrestling ever claimed him fully, Dory was an athlete in the more conventional sense. He had a genuine background in amateur wrestling, the real competitive kind, and he was a football player. A good one. He played college football at West Texas State University, the same school that would produce a startling number of professional wrestlers over the years. His college career reached its peak with a Sun Bowl appearance in El Paso, Texas, where his team won a nail-biter 15-14 over Ohio University. That combination of amateur wrestling and football gave Dory something that would set him apart for the rest of his career: legitimate athletic credibility. He was not a bodybuilder pretending to be an athlete. He was a real one. And when he finally stepped into the professional ranks, that authenticity came through in everything he did. Dory Funk Jr. had his first professional match in 1963 in Amarillo, Texas. He defeated a wrestler named Don Fargo, and it was a family affair in every sense. His whole world showed up to support him. The entire West Texas State football team was there. The Tascosa High School amateur wrestling team, which Dory himself had been helping coach as part of his student teaching, was in the crowd. This was not some anonymous debut in a far-off town. This was a young man being launched into the family business, surrounded by everyone who believed in him. And from the very start, something was obvious. Dory had a style. He worked stiff and hard-hitting, but he was also technically brilliant. He was not a brawler who happened to know some holds. He was a mat technician who could hit you hard enough to make you question your life choices. He fought the rough men of the Amarillo territory in those early years. Harley Race, who would become one of the most important names in his life. Iron Mike, Wild Bull Curry, men who did not go easy on a promoter's son just because of his last name. If anything, they went harder. And Dory absorbed it all and grew. He is also credited with inventing, or at least popularizing to the point of ownership, one of the most beautiful submission holds in all of wrestling: the Texas Cloverleaf. a punishing, twisting leg lock that folds an opponent's own body against them. To this day, whenever a modern wrestler applies that hold, they are, whether they know it or not, paying tribute to Dory Funk Jr. As the 1960s went on, Dory moved beyond the family territory. He wrestled in Florida. He wrestled in Missouri, in the fiercely competitive St. Louis scene that was considered the heartbeat of serious professional wrestling in America. And crucially, he began making trips to Japan, where his technical, disciplined style was appreciated in a way that few American wrestlers ever experienced. Everywhere he went, his skills sharpened. He added devastating uppercut forearm smashes. He mastered a whole arsenal of suplexes. He refined his leg locks until they looked like they could genuinely end careers. By the late 1960s, Dory Funk Jr. was no longer a promising prospect. He was one of the best wrestlers on the planet, and the biggest prize in the sport was about to come within his reach. To understand what happened next, you have to understand what the NWA World Heavyweight Championship meant back then. This was not one belt among dozens. This was the belt. The National Wrestling Alliance was a coalition of regional promotions all across the country and around the world, and they all recognized a single world champion. That champion would travel from territory to territory, defending the title against the top local hero in each region. Being NWA World Champion meant you were, by consensus of the entire industry, the best. It meant you could be trusted to represent the business in every town, night after night, and make everyone look good while never getting exposed. It was the most demanding job in wrestling, and the men who held it were carefully chosen. In 1968, Dory Funk Jr. came into the NWA's championship picture. The reigning champion was Gene Kiniski, a gruff, hard-nosed Canadian who had held the title for years and was every bit as tough as his reputation suggested. And on February 11, 1969, in Tampa, Florida, at the Fort Homer Hesterly Armory, Dory Funk Jr. challenged Gene Kiniski for the most important championship in professional wrestling. He won it with a spinning toe hold, his father's finishing move, the hold that ran in the family blood. At just 28 years old, Dory Funk Jr. was the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, and what followed was one of the most remarkable title reigns in the history of the sport. He held that championship for 4.5 years. Let that number sink in. In an era of grueling schedules, of wrestling nearly every single night, of traveling constantly and defending the title against a different killer in every town, Dory Funk Jr. carried the load for 4.5 years. Roughly 1,563 days. To this day, that stands as the second longest uninterrupted reign in the entire history of the NWA World Championship. The only man ahead of him is the legendary Lou Thesz, one of the founding gods of the sport. Think about what that reign required. As champion, Dory was expected to go out night after night and wrestle 60-minute matches. Broadway draws, as they called them. He had to make the local hero look like $1 million, take him to the absolute limit, and then find a way to retain the title without ever making his challenger look weak. It was a job that required not just athletic ability, but psychology, stamina, generosity, and an almost supernatural consistency. And Dory did it better than almost anyone before or since. There is a detail about that era that modern fans sometimes struggle to appreciate. The NWA World Champion did not have a home. He did not wrestle 2 nights a week and fly home to his family. He lived on the road, permanently, moving from one territory to the next in an endless loop. He would fly into a city he had never seen, wrestle a man he might be meeting for the first time in front of a passionate local crowd that worshipped their hometown hero, go the full-time limit distance, and then get back on a plane or into a car and do it all again the next night in a different state or a different country. There were no days off in any meaningful sense. There was only the belt, the schedule, and the responsibility. And Dory shouldered that responsibility for a length of time that seems almost superhuman in hindsight. 4.5 years of it. Every promoter in the alliance trusted him to walk into their territory, protect their top star, protect the prestige of the title, and never ever let anyone down. That trust was the highest compliment the business could pay a man, and Dory earned it every single night. During that reign, he defended the title against a who's who of wrestling legends. He fought the Sheik, He fought Johnny Valentine, one of the stiffest, most feared workers of the entire generation. He battled Ernie Ladd, the enormous former pro football player. He clashed with Antonio Inoki and Giant Baba, the two titans of Japanese wrestling. And he tangled again and again with Wahoo McDaniel and countless regional champions who each got their shot at the man carrying the gold. But there was one rivalry above all others. One opponent whose name will forever be linked with Dory Funk Jr. That man was Jack Brisco. Jack Brisco was an Oklahoma-born, part Native American wrestler with a genuine amateur background as an NCAA champion. He was smooth, he was scientific, and he was widely regarded as the natural, deserving heir to the world title. And for years, the wrestling world was captivated by the idea of Brisco challenging Funk for the championship. It was the ultimate matchup. Two of the greatest technical wrestlers alive, one carrying the belt, one destined to take it. Promoters across the country built entire storylines around the anticipation. Over the course of their careers, Brisco and Funk would share a ring on around 160 different occasions. 160 times. Think about the chemistry, the trust, the sheer mutual respect required for two men to work together that many times and have it mean something every single time. Their matches were considered masterpieces of the craft. And the fans desperately wanted to see Brisco finally dethrone Funk in a clean, decisive contest that would crown a new champion in the most prestigious way possible. That match was scheduled. The plan was in place. Dory Funk Jr. was going to lose the championship to Jack Brisco in a bout that would have been remembered as one of the defining moments of the era. And then tragedy struck. In 1973, on his father's ranch in West Texas, Dory Funk Jr. was involved in a pickup truck accident. He was injured, and injured seriously enough that the carefully laid plans for the championship change were thrown into complete chaos. The Brisco match could not happen the way it was supposed to. The NWA had a champion who was suddenly hurt, and a title picture that had been building for months collapsing in real time. Now here is where the story takes on an air of mystery that has never fully been resolved. There are people in the wrestling business, even today, who do not believe the accident actually happened. Some have long suspected that the injury was a convenient cover story, a way to change plans behind the scenes for political reasons within the NWA. What is known is this: there was reportedly a decision made at the highest level of the alliance that the champion should not lose the title to Jack Brisco in that moment. Some accounts suggest that Dory's own father, Dory Sr., a powerful voice within the NWA, did not want his son dropping the championship to a fellow fan favorite in the way it had been planned. Whatever the true reason, the outcome was the same. On May 24, 1973, a hastily recovered Dory Funk Jr. was rushed into a ring in Kansas City, and there he lost the NWA World Heavyweight Championship not to Jack Brisco but to Harley Race, his old rival from the Amarillo days. The same Harley Race who had helped toughen him up when he was just a promoter's kid. Race would only hold the title for a few months before dropping it to Brisco, who finally got his coronation. But the dream match, Funk versus Brisco, with the title changing hands cleanly between them, never happened the way it was meant to. And that match against Harley Race in Kansas City was so respected for its quality, even under the strangest of circumstances, that it was named Pro Wrestling Illustrated's Match of the Year for 1973. The following year, a Funk vs. Brisco Classic would take the very same honor. 2 consecutive matches of the year involving Dory Funk Jr. That is the mark of a man operating at the absolute summit of his craft. Losing the world title would have been the end of the story for a lesser wrestler. For Dory Funk Jr., it was barely the halfway point. Because while American audiences knew Dory as a former world champion, there was another country where he was something closer to a deity. That country was Japan. Dory made his debut for All Japan Pro Wrestling in 1973, the same year he lost the NWA title. The company had only been founded the year before by the legendary Giant Baba, and Dory Funk Jr. became one of the foundational foreign stars who helped build All Japan into one of the most respected wrestling promotions on earth. The Japanese wrestling audience valued exactly the things Dory did best: technical excellence, toughness, fighting spirit, a sense of legitimate athletic competition. In Japan, they did not want cartoon characters. They wanted to believe that what they were watching was a genuine contest between two elite fighters. And nobody sold that belief better than Dory Funk Jr. Over the years, he feuded with all the giants of Japanese wrestling: Giant Baba himself, Jumbo Tsuruta, the extraordinary athlete who many consider one of the greatest of all time, the Destroyer. He battled fellow foreign monsters like Abdullah the Butcher, the Sheik, Bruiser Brody, and Stan Hansen, men who brought chaos and violence to contrast with Dory's clinical precision. His biggest singles achievement in Japan was winning the NWA International Heavyweight Championship, a title he would capture multiple times across his tenure. But it was in tag team wrestling that Dory reached perhaps his most beloved status in Japan, because it was there that he teamed with the one partner who understood him better than anyone else in the world: his brother, Terry Funk, the Funk Brothers. Dory and Terry, two sons of a Texas wrestling family and one of the greatest tag teams the sport has ever seen. They were a study in contrast that somehow worked perfectly. Dory was the calm, methodical, technical anchor. Terry was the wild, unpredictable, borderline, unhinged brawler who would do absolutely anything. Together, they were unstoppable, and Japanese audiences adored them. The Funks won All Japan's most prestigious tag team tournament, the world's strongest tag determination league, on 3 separate occasions in 1977, 1979, and 1982. And on December 11, 1980, they had a match against Giant Baba and Jumbo Tsuruta that was so extraordinary it was named Match of the Year by Tokyo Sports. When you win Match of the Year in Japan, in an era stacked with legendary performers, you are being recognized as something truly special. And there is a piece of history the Funk brothers share that no other family in wrestling can claim. Dory Funk Jr. held the NWA World Championship, and his younger brother Terry won it too in 1975. To this day, Dory and Terry Funk are the only pair of brothers in history to each hold the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. In a business built on family dynasties, that is a record that may never be broken. Now, most fans in the United States have a particular memory of the Funk brothers, and it comes from one specific night. In 1986, Dory and Terry arrived in the World Wrestling Federation, Vince McMahon's rapidly expanding national promotion. Dory was rechristened with a new name. He was no longer Dory Funk Jr., the dignified former world champion. He was now simply Hoss Funk, a big, tough Texan in a cowboy hat. At WrestleMania 2 in 1986, spread across 3 cities, the Funk brothers had one of the most memorable matches of the night. Dory and Terry defeated the team of Tito Santana and the Junkyard Dog, 2 enormously popular fan favorites. For a whole generation of American wrestling fans who came of age during the World Wrestling Federation boom, that WrestleMania 2 match was their introduction to the Funks. Terry left the World Wrestling Federation shortly afterward, but Dory stuck around for a while longer, often teaming with a storyline brother named Jimmy Jack Funk, who in reality had no relation to the family whatsoever. They were managed by Jimmy Hart and feuded with the likes of the Junkyard Dog and the British Bulldogs. It was not the most glorious chapter of Dory's career, but it introduced him to millions of new fans and cemented the Funk name in mainstream wrestling consciousness. What is truly staggering about Dory Funk Jr., though, is not any single chapter. It is the sheer, almost unbelievable length of his career. Most wrestlers are finished by their 40s. Dory just kept going. Through the 1980s, he wrestled across the NWA territories, in the Mid-Atlantic region, in Georgia, in Florida, in the Central States. He even faced a young Ric Flair for the NWA title in Toronto in 1982, in a passing of the torch between 2 different generations of world champions. He returned to Japan again and again throughout the 1990s. He showed up in Extreme Championship Wrestling, the gritty, rebellious promotion in Philadelphia, reuniting with Terry and even competing in a no-rope barbed wire match. A brutal, bloody style that could not have been further from the technical mat classics of his prime. He appeared in World Championship Wrestling for Legends reunions. He wrestled in New Japan Pro Wrestling in 2001. The man simply would not stop. But as extraordinary as his in-ring career was, Dory Funk Jr.'s greatest and most lasting contribution to professional wrestling may not have been anything he did as a wrestler at all. It may have been what he did as a teacher. In the 1990s, Dory settled in Ocala, Florida, and opened a professional wrestling school. It went through a few names over the years. The Funkin' Dojo, when it was affiliated with the World Wrestling Federation, and later his own promotion and training ground, the Funkin' Conservatory. And through those doors passed a truly astonishing list of future stars. Consider this roll call of students who learned from Dory Funk Jr., Kurt Angle, the Olympic gold medalist who became one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, Matt Hardy and Jeff Hardy, the Daredevil brothers who thrilled a generation, Lita, one of the most influential women's wrestlers in history, Edge, a future multiple-time world champion and Hall of Famer, Christian, Mickie James, Test. When the World Wrestling Federation needed a place to develop its raw young talent in the late 1990s, it turned to Dory Funk Jr. Because everyone understood that if you wanted to learn how to actually wrestle, how to tell a story in the ring, how to command respect and carry yourself like a professional, there was no better teacher alive. Dory taught what he called the Dory Funk method of professional wrestling. It was built on the fundamentals his father had drilled into him on that Texas ranch decades earlier: chain wrestling, psychology, timing, toughness, respect for the business. He was passing down a lineage that stretched all the way back to the origins of the sport, handing it, hold by hold, to the men and women who would carry wrestling into the 21st century. Think for a moment about what that really means. When Kurt Angle went on to have 5-star classics that are still studied today, part of what he was drawing on came from Dory Funk Jr. When Edge main-evented WrestleMania as a world champion, the foundations of how he carried himself in a ring traced back to lessons learned in Ocala. When Jeff Hardy soared off ladders and the Hardy Boys redefined tag team wrestling for a generation, they did so having first learned the basics from a man who won the world title in 1969. That is the strange and beautiful mathematics of a great teacher. Dory did not just have his own career, he had a piece of every career he ever helped shape. His influence multiplied outward through his students and then through their students in a chain that will keep going long after everyone reading this is gone. And Dory approached teaching with the same generosity he brought to being a champion. Everyone who trained under him described the same thing. A patient man, a humble man, a man who never lauded his legendary status over the young hopefuls in his gym, but who instead rolled up his sleeves and got in the ring with them, taking bumps well into his 60s and 70s to show a kid exactly how a move was supposed to feel. He did not just tell people how to wrestle. He showed them with his own aging body again and again until they understood. His wife Marty became his partner in every sense, helping run Bang TV, the platform that broadcast the matches from his Ocala promotion and kept the Funkin' Conservatory alive and thriving. Together, Dory and Marty built something that outlasted trends and eras. A living, breathing school of old-school professional wrestling in the middle of Florida. And still, Dory Funk Jr. would not stop competing himself. This is perhaps the most incredible part of the entire story. Long after his contemporaries had retired, been inducted into halls of fame, and settled into quiet lives, Dory Funk Jr. was still lacing up his boots. He wrestled his so-called retirement match in 2008, defeating Genichiro Tenryu and Masanobu Fuchi's team with a spinning toe hold, the same move that won him the world title in 1969. But retirement did not take. He kept wrestling, into his 70s, and then into his 80s. The recognition his career deserved did arrive, and it arrived in full. In 2009, Dory Funk Jr. and his brother Terry were inducted together into the WWE Hall of Fame, presented by their old friend and fellow Texan Dusty Rhodes. It was a fitting honor for two brothers who had given their entire lives to the business. Dory had already been inducted into the NWA Hall of Fame in 2006, and into the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame back in 1996. In 2014, he received Pro Wrestling Illustrated's Stanley Weston Award for Lifetime Achievement. The honors piled up, each one recognizing a different facet of a career that seemed to have no end. And in a beautiful full-circle moment, in April of 2025, Dory's own father, Dory Funk Sr., was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame as a legacy inductee, joining both of his sons. The entire Funk wrestling dynasty, 3 generations of Texas toughness enshrined together at last. But the truly mind-bending statistic, the one that perfectly captures who Dory Funk Jr. was, comes from his final match. On August 24, 2024, at 83 years old, Dory Funk Jr. stepped into a wrestling ring one last time. And it was not some ceremonial, gentle farewell where a legend gets a standing ovation and rolls out of the ring. No. At 83 years of age, Dory Funk Jr. competed in what was billed as a double hell current explosion death match at an event in Japan honoring both his late brother Terry and the anniversary of the deathmatch pioneer Atsushi Onita. He teamed with his longtime friend and student Osamu Nishimura, and he won. 83 years old, in a Japanese death match, and he came out victorious. There is no other athlete in any sport, anywhere in the world, who can claim anything remotely like it. It was the perfect final testament to the man his father raised. Never quit, never quit, never quit. Sadly, the years that followed brought loss. His beloved brother Terry, his partner in so many battles, passed away in August of 2023 at the age of 79. The two Funk brothers, the only siblings ever to both hold the NWA World Championship, the tag team that conquered Japan and America alike, were now separated. Dory carried on, still appearing at wrestling events, still beloved. In January of 2024, he was backstage at the Royal Rumble. In January of 2025, he appeared alongside other legends at a WWE Saturday Night's main event. Even in his 80s, the business he loved kept welcoming him home. And then, on August 4th, 2026, the story reached its final chapter. Dory Funk Jr. passed away at 85 in hospice care in Ocala with his wife Marty at his side. She described him simply, and with a love that had lasted decades, as such a good guy. Such a good guy. The family announced plans for a private ceremony with a public memorial service to follow on Thanksgiving Day, a chance for the countless people whose lives he touched to say goodbye. The tributes came instantly, and from the highest places. Paul Levesque, known to the world as Triple H, now one of the most powerful executives in the entire industry, announced Dory's passing and spoke of how his hard-nosed style inspired countless performers and helped lay the early foundation for professional wrestling to become the global phenomenon it is today. He pointed to Dory's decades spent training younger athletes and to how his travels across North America and Asia helped create an early blueprint for how wrestling would spread across the world. Brian Blair, the veteran wrestler who had grown up in Florida, booing Dory as a villain before eventually calling him a mentor and a dear friend, wrote movingly of how hard it was to find the right words. He remembered watching Dory as a kid, jeering him as the ultimate heel while he battled Blair's hero, Jack Brisco. He called him an absolute legend, who commanded respect simply by being himself. The Cauliflower Alley Club, the fraternal organization of wrestling veterans, mourned him as a champion, a teacher, a gentleman, and an ambassador for the sport. And Dave Meltzer, the most respected wrestling journalist alive, placed him among the genuine all-time greats, a man whose longevity was almost without parallel in the entire history of the industry. Because that is the thing about Dory Funk Jr. that becomes so clear when you look at his life all at once. He was not defined by controversy. He was not defined by scandal. He was defined by excellence, by respect, and by an almost impossible dedication to his craft that spanned more than 60 years. He was a real athlete who became a real champion. He carried the most important title in wrestling for 4.5 years, a feat of endurance and skill that has been matched by only one man in history. He helped build the entire Japanese wrestling scene into what it became. He formed, with his brother, a tag team and a family legacy that will never be equaled. And then, in his second act, he selflessly poured everything he knew into the next generations, training Olympic gold medalists and future Hall of Famers and daredevils who would define wrestling for decades after his own prime had ended. He came from a ranch in West Texas where his father taught him that quitting was not an option, and he lived that lesson so completely, so literally, that he was still winning matches at 83 years old. Most people cannot climb a flight of stairs comfortably at that age. Dory Funk Jr. was surviving a death match in a foreign country and pinning his opponent's shoulders to the mat. The wrestling business is very different now than it was when a young Dory Funk beat Gene Kiniski in Tampa with a spinning toehold. It is corporate now, global, streamed to hundreds of millions of screens. The territories are gone. The old NWA World Championship, the belt that meant everything, exists in a very different form. But every single wrestler who steps into a ring today, whether they realize it or not, is standing on a foundation that men like Dory Funk Jr. laid down, in the holds they use, in the psychology of their matches, in the very idea that professional wrestling can be both spectacular entertainment and a legitimate display of athletic skill. There is a photograph the Ocala Gazette published, taken just months before he died, in January of 2026. In it, an 85-year-old Dory Funk Jr. is smiling, holding an NWA Championship belt, while his wife Marty kisses him on the cheek. It is a picture of a man at peace. A man who did everything he ever set out to do, who was loved by his family and respected by his entire profession, and who never, not once in more than 6 decades, gave anyone reason to doubt his commitment to the business he adored.